the Flip Coach, and I wanted to continue the conversation from the video that I did a few days ago. I posted a video on the three main areas of real estate investing, which is wholesaling, fix and flip, and buy and hold. And then I said I'd break each one of these down. And I did the video on wholesaling and for the fix and flip. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about buy and hold. So buy and hold is all about that passive income. That's what a lot of people are wanting, that passive income. But we have to think about, the time, energy, and effort that we put into something, and what is the outcome of that? What do we get back from it? So in regards to rental properties, what that actually is called is a capitalization rate or a cap rate. That's the return on your investment, okay? So what you want to think about it is this way. If you're looking at a property that you want to purchase potentially to rent out, you have to look at the cap rate of the property to see, is it actually going to be a smart investment? Most cap rates that we look at are 10% or a little bit more, maybe 10 to 14%, 10 to 15%. A lot of hedge funds and larger investment groups will do cap rates of as low as 5%. That's because they're owning $1 billion worth of rental properties. So 5% of $1 billion is a good amount of money. So you have to look at your cap rate. And in very simple form, your cap rate is your investment in the property. If you bought the property for $100,000, and then you would want to divide that by the number of what your income minus your expenses to get that net income. So if I took my rental rates of whatever I'm charging every single month, and then I deduct taxes, insurance, maintenance for the property, and maybe even, payments. If I have a mortgage on the property, I want to deduct that as well. And then I need to see what the exact net amount of income that I have at the end of the year. And then whatever my investment was, whether that was my down payment, and maybe I did some repairs to the property as well. Or if I bought the property cash, then obviously I don't have mortgage payments to deduct. So I should have more of a net at the end of the year. And then I want to take that total investment and divide it by what the net is. So let's say that I took a property and I just bought it for $100,000 cash. That's all the money that I have into it. No repairs or anything needed. And at the end of 12 months, I netted $10,000 cash after all of my expenses when I rented the property out. So if I have a $100,000 property and I made $10,000, that's a 10% cap rate, okay? So you just want to make sure that you do have, that the numbers work out at the end of the day for a buy and hold. I mean, that's really what it's all about. A wholesale deal is much easier because whether I make $1,500 or whether I make $115,000, when I take that property, I don't really have any liability. It's not like I'm going to buy it, close on it, and then be like, oh my gosh, I can't sell it to anyone because it's overpriced. You're going to know that beforehand. Well, with a buy and hold property, you kind of need to run your numbers and really understand that in the beginning to make sure that it's actually going to be a viable investment. Now, like I've been saying in these videos, everything's intertwined. When I'm looking at properties that I have in contract for wholesale, let's say I have 3 properties in contract for wholesale, and the first property, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to sell it to an investor that is speculating. It's in a part of Miami that they believe is going to be worth, twice as much in a year or two, and they really think that they can overpay for that property because they're going to get their money back, and I'm going to wholesale that property. That one's easy. I'm going to make a lot more money on the wholesale than I would probably rehabbing it myself under that scenario. And then the next property I have in contract, I look at it and I say, okay, well, I could wholesale this for about $55,000, but if I did the rehab, I could make, $100,000, maybe $105,000 or $110,000, almost twice as much money. Then that's a no-brainer. If I can get that project done in less than 6 months, then I'm going to go ahead and rehab that project and make that additional profit. Then I look at the third property. And I'm like, well, I could wholesale it and make my $55,000. Or if I did a fix and flip on it, if I did a rehab on it, maybe I'd make like $80,000 or more. But really, this property is perfect. It's in a great location, and the rental rates are really high in that area, or maybe it really qualifies for Airbnb. So I'm going to look at that and look at those numbers, and that might be a property that I decide that instead of wholesaling it or instead of fixing flipping, then my exit strategy is actually going to be, I'm going to purchase it myself and buy and hold. The reality is that when you get into real estate investing, the more exit strategies that you have on every single deal, the more viable your success is going to be. Because if you think about it, if I have a property and it's a one-trick pony, if I don't fix and flip this thing, I'm not going to really be able to wholesale it for much. I don't want to buy and hold it. It's not really a good rental property. It only qualifies for a fix and flip. That might be a project that I pass on, especially if I'm not making that much profit on a fix and flip. That just means that I probably got the property at too high of a price. It's in too bad a condition, so it has those issues on it. But the reality is that when I look at every single property, if I have the opportunity to sort of cherry pick from wholesaling and say, hey, this property right here really qualifies for a really good buy and hold. So we had a property over by the stadium, the Hard Rock Stadium, and these properties were renting for crazy prices. It was an actual single family home that they had made into a sort of duplex, and they actually did it with permits. They just hadn't rezoned the property as a duplex or multifamily. Well, it's not multifamily, but as a duplex, as a rental property. But that property, the numbers at the end of the day would have worked out tremendous for us to do either long-term rentals or short-term rentals, and it made a lot more sense for us to pick up that property and instead of wholesaling it and rehabbing it. So you can kind of intertwine those things. But one of the things you also have to think about, the pros and cons of every type of deal. Rental properties, even though you have that passive income, you still have to manage them. You have to collect rents. Getting a call on a Sunday night that somebody's toilet is overflowing and you got to go and fix that is not a fun phone call to get. So sometimes, you look at those wholesale deals of like, wow, I had that property, I owned it for a matter of a day and that's all I owned it. That's all the liability that I had. Now I've got this rental property, and if it's got a pool, what if one of the neighborhood kids falls in? I got to make sure my insurance is up to date, and I really have to just protect myself. And it does, at the end of the day, become a liability because it's something that you own and something that you continually have to manage. So those are things that you have to think about. Real estate investing is never just going to be easy, but as long as you kind of think it out ahead of time and come up with those proper exit strategies, then you'll have a lot of success. So that's breaking down a little bit more thought of a rental property. When you're getting a property, you have to make sure that if you need by the city or county that it has to be licensed as a rental property. You need to make sure that you have your insurances in place. You need to make sure that you have your rules and regulations as a landlord. You need to make sure that you have a very solid lease agreement with people and that you're doing everything legally as far as with their deposit money, and paying rent on time, how to do an eviction, maybe even talk to an attorney and find out, if my tenant stops paying rent, can they bury themselves in the place for the next 6 months and tie me up in court without making any money? And absolutely they can. So these are all things that you have to think about. There's pros and cons to each, and it's just a matter at the end of the day what works for you. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into the buy and hold properties. I'll be posting some other videos in regards to breaking some of this down a little bit more and some actual deals I'm going to cover that we've been working on as well. So between now and then, I'm your flip coach and happy investing.